Steve calling in from Nebraska, who has a question for us. Steve, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
Hi, Dan and Thom. Happy weekend, everyone. Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to know your guys' thoughts about cell-cultured meat, or otherwise known as lab-grown meat. What your guys' thoughts were about that?
Yeah, take it away, Thom.
Yeah, so I think cell culture meat is a really potentially exciting development. It's something that now the FDA has approved as being safe for humans. And although it's not so commercially available in the USA, it's being sold in some restaurants in places like Singapore and things like this. So this is something that's like it's kind of really an early technology, but it's a really exciting and interesting thing. It's not only does it mean that we can make the kind of foods that people love and want to eat without having to slaughter any animals or raise them in factory farms, but it's also incredibly efficient from an environmental point of view. And I think one of the things that's really interesting and something we should also be watching out for is kind of how governments are responding to this and how we're thinking about this legislatively, because there's been some kind of around in Europe and around places, some interesting kind of approaches to try and sort of cut this industry off and ban it early on.
Yes.
So you can't use this. And I think we want to think about as consumers whether we really want our governments to be stopping us from even being able to make our own decisions about whether we want to eat this food or not. So those are my kind of initial thoughts on this topic.
Yes. For example, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida specifically banned lab-grown meat sales in Florida last year. That was a crazy story. Again, just reporting facts here. Just reporting facts. Just want to make that clear. We're a nonprofit. But anyway, so obviously people are against it. There may be financial interest as to why people are against that. Obviously, Florida, has some cattle growing operations going on, much like Texas as well, where I'm at. Huge state for cattle. So some people may be against it, and as a result, may put out campaigns in AstroTurf as to why you shouldn't buy lab-grown meat. And that's not just true for lab-grown meat. That's true for all plant-based foods and any other kinds of meat alternatives. So just putting that out there. Just putting that out there. Something to think about. But yeah, I'm all for it. I think it's great. I think it's a technology that is going to be awesome and will be really cool when it becomes more mainstream. The only thing I have with it is that I know a lot of people who are like, oh man, I really consider all these ideas and I can't wait when the lab grown meat comes out so I can try it and go with it. And it's like, hey man, I don't know if you tried vegan cheese lately. It's a lot better than it was like 10 years ago. So like, there's already been a lot of improvements in plant-based alternatives to meat products and stuff. So I say anybody who's interested, try some of the stuff that's already there and see what you feel about that. But can't be live in a perfect world, because eventually when lab-grown meat comes out, there'll be some people that'll say, oh, well, I'm concerned about this or I'm concerned about that, and then it's a moving of the goalposts kind of thing, But I don't know. That's my take on it. Steve, we gave our thoughts. What do you think?
Well, I just want to know when it's going to be available in the store. Why the push? I mean, I get the pushback why ranchers and farmers might feel this might affect their livelihood, but consumers should have that choice to decide. I would rather eat a hamburger that's not from a slaughtered animal. I ideally I'd like to be a vegetarian, but there's just too much carnivore blood. I mean, I just like the taste of beef and blood too much. So, I mean, I'll never be able to become a vegan for sure, or a vegetarian. But I'd like to have that alternative, that choice to eat a nice hamburger that's not been from a slaughtered animal. Why don't I have that choice?
Well, like Thom said, the FDA kind of just approved it, and so there are startups that are trying to get into that and make it available to market. I don't know those individual startups and their timeline to getting the products to market. There's a lot of things that go into that. So I would assume probably pretty soon And unfortunately, and I just looked it up. Yeah, even Alabama as well is also already banned it, even though it's not commercially available in the U.S. that I'm aware of. I don't think it's available in Europe either. Tom, am I right about that? Because
yeah, that's right. So from what I can remember, it's available basically. It's regulatorily available in Singapore, Israel, and the US now, and you can buy some of these products in restaurants in places like Singapore. The main reason we don't have it in the US right now is basically because of some of the technical challenges around getting this at producing this at scale and at costs that kind of make sense economically. So this is still a really new technology, and there are just some kind of technical hurdles around things like some of the inputs. So things like how the culture that you grow the cells in, these can be quite expensive, the sources that people are using at the moment. And so people are looking at okay, can we find cheaper alternatives for this? Can we bring these costs down? And then there's all sorts of just kind of boring logistical stuff around, can you build big enough factories? Can you get your pipeline, your logistics working so you can get all your bits of the supply chain working? So it's still a few years out probably from when we can go and buy this in the stores, but it's looking good. And yeah, I think I'm sure there are many people like you, Steve, who are looking forward to being able to buy their meat and not without any kind of feeling that they're contributing to factory farming. So hopefully it'll be soon.
There you go. See, why did I even bother answering? Because Tom actually had a real answer there. He has actually looked at the issue and could do it. It's a stupid habit of mine. But anyway, yeah. So there you go. I think that pretty much solves it there. Steve, what do you think?
Well, one quick question: Have either of you ever had an Impossible Whopper?
Oh yeah, that was one of the first things I had when I went vegan.
Aren't they just the most gnarly, awful tasting things? I'm sorry, I just didn't really try to imitate a beef patty with that. I mean, my gosh, it's horrible.
Instead of imitation, to me, I think of it more as just something different, right? It doesn't have to exactly be the same. I can still enjoy it for what it is. Personally, I'm more of a Beyond Meat kind of guy. I like it better than the Impossible stuff. And if I am getting stat for my home, it's usually Beyond Meat. But veganism is more than just or at least attempts for reducing animal products is more than just meat replacements as well. It's also just a diversification of protein stuff. Now when I do meal prep, I'm usually doing a whole different range of stuff that's usually not meat imitation stuff. One, because it can be expensive at a larger scale, but also there's just other things out there that don't have to be, I don't know, replacement, just like stuff that's already there, like beans or tofu or any other kind of thing. But that's my thoughts. Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I like most of these meat replacements, but yeah, I mean, I'm obsessed with tofu. I'll be honest. It's a wonder. Yeah. It's a wonder food. There's so many things you can do with it.
It's true.
I know for most people who aren't on the kind of the vegan pipeline, they probably have no idea what you do with the tofu, but it's a genius product.
That's the thing too. That's the tofu propaganda that people, there's a lot of mainstream media is like, oh, tofu's the worst and stuff. And I remember I don't think I tried tofu ever until 2020. And at first I was like, okay. And now I know how to make it actually really pretty good. So, there's a learning curve with that. But anyway, sorry that Impossible Burgers aren't the best for you, Steve. But there's other things out there that you might like.
Well, I can't wait for the lab-grown beef. I hope that isn't banned. That'd just be an awful thing if that got banned.
Well, so, I'll say this, Steve, with the coming administration, anything is possible. So,
oh boy. Well, you guys can't talk politics on this one.
Nope.
On this nonprofit. I don't want you to lose your
That's all I can say. That's all I can say. Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway,
it's great talking with you guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. Have a great one.